Greetings, friends of liberty. As the Chinese saying, may you live in interesting times, is turning out to be something of an understatement for the first 3 months in America under President Trump's leadership. His ongoing and increasing contempt for the rule of law and the damage caused by his policies, both to the economy and international relations, immediately suggest the following two questions. Will and should President Trump be impeached? Let's consider the evidence for both. Number one, will President Trump be impeached? First, every person is a package deal. Some positives, some negatives. So, for example, some of us may have had experience with lovers who have reached Olympian heights in one area while failing abysmally in others. So that Playboy bunny who graces the bedroom at twilight with her voluptuous silhouette and who's very adept at hopping around under the sheets, but who struggles to spell the word potato. Or that five-star chef who, for breakfast on Monday morning, whips up the fluffiest German apple pancakes, on Tuesday a jaw-dropping 10-inch high banana nut waffle cake, and on Wednesday croissant French toast drizzled with raspberry sauce, but who, when her derriere descends on the sofa, causes it to creak ominously with every shift of her elephantine weight. Similarly, there are, despite the many Trumpian negatives, actual positives. President Trump is succeeding domestically to a degree in deregulating government and attacking its size by A, essentially shuttering most of the Department of Education and transferring its duties to the states, B, by deregulating the United States energy sector, following the mantra drill baby drill, C, by appointing Lee Zeldin as head of the EPA to reduce its stifling environmental regulations, D, by attacking governmental DEI in various ways, and, to some degree, E, by his attempts with DOGE to reduce governmental waste. All this gives him, among Republicans, an overall 70% approval rating, meaning they would be resistant to impeaching him. With Democrats, on the other hand, he polled at 4%. Another second impeachment variable beside Trump's positives is the present political weakness of the Democrats. The Democratic Party now is in shambles, having embraced for many decades, and still now to a degree, the divisive doctrines of critical race theory, of DEI, of supporting the transgender indoctrination of children and students, of disastrous green energy policies, of huge budget deficits, and of the welfare state in general. This means that the old core of conservative Reagan and Bush Democrats who still a few decades ago had some common sense and presence have gone, leaving the Democratic Party at the point of collapse. Kamala Harris was the perfect symbol of Democratic patheticness. A third impeachment variable on the Republican side is the utter spinelessness of many Republican congressmen who, seeing the president with his 70% approval ratings, are scared to confront him, wanting to put their finger to the wind first. And this reflects the fact that a significant portion of the American right is not classically liberal. If they were, they would be immediately objecting to many of Trump's actions, which brings us to the fourth variable, the courts, who right now are the staunchest upholders of the rule of law in American society. When President Trump's Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, recently shipped off deliberately without proper verification immigrants they claimed belonged to the Venezuelan drug gang Tren de Aragua, they thereby sent at least one innocent person, a professional soccer player, to a torturous El Salvadoran maximum security prison. Similarly, ICE put a normal Canadian tourist into shackles and didn't give her water for hours for a harmless visa violation. And when U.S. District Judge James Boasberg issued an order blocking the Venezuelan deportation flights that Trump was carrying out, ICE sent the Venezuelans on their way anyway, which may have been an unconstitutional violation. How did President Trump later comment on Judge Boasberg's order? By naturally spewing lies and hatred about him, saying he was trying to prevent taking criminals, killers, murderers out of the country, saying he's a radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker, an agitator, calling him crooked and threatening to impeach him. He added that Judge Boasberg didn't win anything, and I'm just doing what the voters wanted me to do. This defamatory and unconstitutional suggestion was so egregious that Chief Justice John Roberts was moved to post the following on social media. For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. This was Chief Justice Roberts giving Trump a very impartial, raised middle finger. Let's pause here for a moment to realize, ironically, that the very existence of murderous drug gangs like Tren de Aragua and cartels like the Sinaloa is caused by the American initiation of the drug war. By making drug growing, shipping, and selling enormously risky, the American drug war also makes it enormously profitable, thus making the drug cartels enormously wealthy. But can Trump accept his own and American blame? No, it couldn't be farthest from his mind. He's specifically saying, drug lords came in through an open border. They're making millions of dollars, destroying people's lives, killing people. Naturally, Trump always blames others. It's always their fault. It's the fault of Biden, Canada, and Mexico. And unfortunately, instead of Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum pointing out Trump's ignorance and America's indirect culpability for creating violent Mexican drug cartels, he's instead gone along with his drug war rhetoric, as has Canada, neither of those governments having the courage or wisdom to slap Trump in the face with his falsehoods. Trump and other American administrations responsible for causing the murder of tens of thousands of innocent Mexicans during and tens of thousands of overdose deaths in the U.S. And would the Democrats point this out? No, they're useless. A fifth impeachment variable is Trump's handling of the economy. And here we're confronted with a Trumpian imposition of tariffs, which has potentially both enormous domestic and international ramifications. What is the understanding of Trump and his administration on tariffs? They have the knowledge level of a 3-year-old, if that. Take, for example, the recent utterances of White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who was asked by an AP reporter how President Trump reconciled imposing tariffs, which are a tax on foreign goods, with his campaign pledge not to raise taxes. The pretty Christian nationalist replied with a smile saying, "When we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you're trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I now regret giving a question to the Associated Press." The president's own understanding is just as idiotic as this 27-year-old's. He's saying that the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff. But tariffs are, of course, precisely what the AP reporter said, a tax on trade. Why would you want to fine trade? Here, for example, is the testimony of an American farmer recently quoted in the Wall Street Journal. If Mr. Trump reimposes these tariffs in April, as he has threatened, we'll face an annual cost increase of about $10,500 for 6 truckloads of Canadian peat moss potting soil. Similarly, most walnut lumber enters the export market, which has collapsed because of Mr. Trump's tariffs. So no $8,000 sale of walnut wood for him. Finally, the tariff on potash will be 10% beginning in April, another $2,500 contribution from our farm to the trade war. Of course, American farmers are used to the damage Trump caused them in his last administration when his tariffs on China resulted in China switching all their soybean purchases to Brazil, largely destroying the American soybean export market and the livelihood of many American soybean farmers. Is tariff really, as the president says, a beautiful word? And not only do tariffs damage American and foreign economies, both, but they can create an enormous political backlash because using them is an act of violent aggression against not only your own consumers, but foreign businesses, as those, for example, of one of America's best allies, Canada. So the types of lies and warlike rhetoric with which the president has smeared Canada in his March 18th interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham, are astonishing. He said, Canada was meant to be the 51st state because we subsidize Canada by $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We have lots of lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything. We certainly don't want their automobiles. I'd rather have them made in Michigan. One of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. The people that, now this was Trudeau, I call him Governor Trudeau, his people were nasty. So when Trump in this interview specifically said, I am a nationalist, this is nationalism. Politically, you threaten other countries with economic destruction unless they become the 51st state. You attack them as evil and try to get your country to hate them by claiming they're taking advantage of you. And economically, you claim you don't need the products of any other country. Hitler and other nationalists had very similar autarkic ideas. This is as bright as saying that the state of Connecticut could be successful by making everything on its own. It doesn't need New York or Iowa or California or any of the other 49 states. This is Trump as an economic moron and presidential thug. This is nationalism. Very notable, however, is that President Trump, whenever he's imposed tariffs, has watched the reaction of Wall Street like a hawk, recently delaying imposing more tariffs precisely because the stock market is already down 10% because of them. But if President Trump were to impose more tariffs, Wall Street traders who, unlike the complete business failure Trump, who has bankrupted at least 4 companies, they, the traders, have an accurate understanding of what will happen. Would Trump, in the face of such financial and economic catastrophe, continue his idiocy? If he would, it would increase his general unpopularity and also the probability of impeachment if, for example, the economy were to fall into a direct Trump-caused recession. The 6th potential reason for impeachment is Trump's gradual betrayal of America's allies, Canada and Mexico, Britain and the Europeans, and our ally, the Ukraine. His switching of geopolitical sides is what prompted Laura Ingraham to point out, the criticism is that you have more in common with Vladimir Putin than you do with globalist leaders, maybe some NATO leaders. You're tougher with Canada than you are with some of our biggest adversaries. This is true. Trump is switching sides, and although presently a nationalist authoritarian and not a fascist, he admires fascistic leaders. He envies them, their complete dictatorial control over their countries, and is slowly pushing in that direction with every presidential action. In fact, Trump talks about Canada in the exact same way Putin talks about the Ukraine. In addition, Trump has actually contemplated eliminating economic sanctions on Russia, has astonishingly eliminated the voice of America, which spread the ideas of freedom to many oppressive countries, has voted in the UN against prosecuting Russia for invading Ukraine, has withdrawn from the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, has cut funding for a Yale University database holding information on over 30,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped by the Russians. This is America in the process of betraying its allies. America is a mercenary power selling its military and economic soul to the highest bidder. In the same way that Elon Musk is destroying Tesla as a brand, so too Donald Trump is destroying America's reputation around the world. Finally, 7th, let's take a brief gander at Trump's psychology as it relates to impeachable tendencies. A, being surrounded by his many Christian nationalist Project 2025, an ultra-MAGA crew of Musk, Vance, Stephen Miller, and others, this increases his lawlessness and is living in his own isolated fantasy bubble. B, the fact that he appears to be on a revenge tour. C, is very evident in disturbing narcissism, which makes him hunger for adulation from genocidal autocrats like Putin and Xi Jinping, demand praise from others like President Zelensky, and which makes him immune to any serious criticism or correction. Many of his subordinates and cabinet members seem to reinforce his narcissism and subservience, with, for example, Attorney General Pam Bondi at a State Department speech a Justice Department speech recently saying, "We all work for the greatest president in the history of our country. We are so proud to work at the directive of Donald Trump." No, Ms. Bondi, you work at the directive of the American people in accordance with our Constitution. Another instance of Trump's thin skin would be when Fox News' Jacques Heinrich criticized Trump's selling of cars on the White House lawn. Trump responded by saying, "I watched Jacques Heinrich from Fox over the weekend, and I thought she was absolutely terrible. She should be working for CNN." Yes, narcissists hate being criticized. In conclusion, let's return to the two questions I asked at the beginning. Will Trump be impeached? And should Trump be impeached? Well, if Trump continues in office the way that he has for the foreseeable future, he will likely not be impeached because A, Republicans approve of his deregulation, his attacks on DEI and attempts to cut costs. B, the Democrats are in disarray. C, those Republicans who do oppose him are relatively few right now, since MAGA has taken over so much of the Republican Party. D, he has not yet indicated that he will directly disobey court orders and so has not yet provoked a constitutional crisis. E, Trump is very alert to how the stock market responds. And F, the American disapproval of his treatment of his allies in the Ukraine presently, while going against the president, is not significant enough to register congressionally. However, if Trump, in his narcissistic arrogance, does something really stupid like invade Canada or Greenland, engage in even more corruption than his issuance of his Trump meme Bitcoin, directly disobey court orders, or declare martial law, then he will be impeached. Now to the second question, should Trump be impeached? Yes, for the following reasons. A, Trump has acted unconstitutionally in violating the Fourth Amendment by simply barging into immigrants' homes without a search warrant or proper authorization. These are Gestapo tactics. B, he's likely unconstitutionally targeted law firms like Perkins Coie and others that have opposed him in the past by threatening them with governmental prosecution for frivolous reasons. C, he's unconstitutionally invoked the Alien Enemies Act against immigrants when this act can only be used in a time of war against actual or likely enemy combatants. Note, incidentally, as political analyst Tim Miller has argued, Trump has come very close to claiming the authority to overrule Article 1, the authority of Congress, as when he has said, quoting Napoleon, that he who saves his country does not violate any law. Article 2 in overruling Biden's auto-signature pardons. And Article 3 in overruling or ignoring a court order. Again, all this comes from Project 2025's infamous unitary executive theory. D, finally, most importantly, Trump has betrayed many of our allies and damaged the rule of law with his political and economic threats and actions. While it's true, as Trump says, that America is protected by two big, beautiful oceans, number one, fighting evil is much easier and less costly if you do it with as many allies as possible. And two, if you do that, economic success and prosperity for both America and its world trading partners will result with everyone getting wealthier, since you create the largest peaceful free trade zone possible. All this, President Trump is in the process of damaging by making America a mercenary nation and de facto ally of Putin's genocidal Russia, while economically attacking all of America's friends and threatening to withdraw military support. A very high crime and misdemeanor indeed. Happy for my part that we English, presently in 1793, unlike America in 2025, have one of the greatest leaders in Prime Minister Pitt the Younger to have ever led a Western nation, and who himself understands full well who our true friends and enemies are. I bid you well, and remain the Scarlet Pimpernel.